Hello, I'm Dominic Taylor of the Limerick Writers' Centre. I'd like to welcome you to this archive series of poets and writers who have read for us here in Limerick over the past number of years. Today we bring you American poet Jane Hirshfield, who read here in 2006. The series is brought to you by the Limerick Writers' Centre. You can contact the centre through our website www.limerickwriterscentre.com. Jane Hirshfield is an American poet, essayist and translator. She is the author of 8 collections of poetry, including the newly published The Beauty, 2015. Come, Thief, After, shortlisted for the T.S. Eliot Prize and named a Best Book of 2006 by the Washington Post, the San Francisco Chronicle and the London Financial Times. Given Sugar, Given Salt was a finalist for the 2001 National Book Critics Circle Award and Lives of the Heart and The October Palace. She is also the author of 2 books of essays, the newly published 10 Windows, How Great Poems Transform the World, 2015, and 9 Gates, Entering the Mind of Poetry. She has also edited and co-translated 4 books containing the works of poets from the past. Ladies and gentlemen, Jane Hirshfield.
Thank you. In America, we usually read standing up, and I was afraid if I stayed sitting that I'd run out of breath. So that's why I'm on my feet. For what binds us? There are names for what binds us. Strong forces, weak forces. Look around, you can see them. The skin that forms in a half-empty cup, nails rusting into the places they join, joints dovetailed on their own weight. The way things stay so solidly wherever they've been set down, and gravity, scientists say, is weak. And see how the flesh grows back across a wound with a great vehemence, more strong than the simple, untested surface before. There's a name for it on horses when it comes back darker and raised. Proud flesh. As all flesh is proud of its wounds, wears them as honors given out after battle, small triumphs pinned to the chest. And when 2 people have loved each other, see how it is like a scar between their bodies, stronger, darker, and proud, how the black cord makes of them a single fabric that nothing can tear or mend. I would like to dedicate this reading, since it is part of a poetry festival, to all of the great poets working under difficult circumstances in countries where perhaps there is little electricity, little paper, in obscure languages that perhaps we will never hear, and just to honor how important it is that those poems also be written. So this is called The Poet. She is working now in a room not unlike this one, the one where I write or you read. Her table is covered with paper. The light of the lamp would be tempered by a shade where the bulb's single harshness might dissolve, but it is not. She has taken it off. Her poems, I will never know them, though they are the ones I most need. Even the alphabet she writes in, I cannot decipher. Her chair. Let us imagine whether it is leather or canvas, vinyl or wicker. Let her have a chair, her shadeless lamp, the table. Let 1 or 2 she loves be in the next room. Let the door be closed, the sleeping ones healthy. Let her have time and silence, enough paper to make mistakes and go on. 3 foxes by the edge of the field at twilight. One ran, her nose to the ground, a rusty shadow, neither hunting nor playing. One stood, sat, lay down, stood again. One never moved, except to turn her head a little as we walked. Finally we drew too close, and they vanished. The woods took them back as if they had never been. I wish I had thought to put my face to the grass. But we kept walking, speaking as strangers do when becoming friends. There is more and more I tell no one, strangers nor loves. This slips into the heart without hurry, as if it had never been. And yet, among the trees, something has changed. Something looks back from the trees and knows me for who I am. I am a great believer in the wisdom held for us in the presences of animals in our lives. Also in the presence of objects, but I don't think I've chosen any of the object poems. Oh, maybe one. We'll see if I read it. The Envoy. One day in that room, a small rat. 2 days later, a snake, who, seeing me enter, whipped the long stripe of his body under the bed, then curled like a docile house pet. I don't know how either came or left. Later, the flashlight found nothing. For a year I watched as something, terror, happiness, grief, entered and then left my body, not knowing how it came in, not knowing how it went out. It hung where words could not reach it. It slept where light could not go. Its scent was neither snake nor rat, neither sensualist nor ascetic. There are openings in our lives of which we know nothing. Through them, the belled herds travel at will, long-legged and thirsty, covered with foreign dust. There's one word in this next poem which, maybe it's more common here, but in America it's a very uncommon word, and so it's hard to hear, which is the plural of beef, beeves. And the beeves that I have in mind are the ones that you see in paintings from Rembrandt to Francis Bacon, cut open and hung on display. Red berries. Again the paracanthus berries redden in rain, as if return were return. It is not. The familiar is not the thing it reminds of. Today's yes is different from yesterday's yes. Even no's adamance alters. From painting to painting, century to century, the tipped-over copper pot spills out different light. The cut-open beeves, their caged and muscled display, are on one canvas radiant, pure, obscene on another. In the end, it is simple enough. The woman of this morning's mirror was a stranger to the woman of last night's. The passionate dreams of the one who slept flit empty and thin from the one who awakens. One woman washes her face, another picks up the boar-bristled hairbrush, a third steps out of her slippers. That each will die in the same bed means nothing to them. Our one breath follows another like spotted horses, no two alike. Black manes and white manes they gallop, piebald and skewbald, eyes flashing sorrow, they too will pass. This poem is titled Rebus, and rebus is something that, again, in American audiences, everybody once knew the word and most people have forgotten it by now. It's the kind of riddle which depends on a visual pun. And the best way to tell you about it is to give you an example of one, which is the rebus for belief would be to draw a picture of a bee and then a picture of a leaf. But the visual part isn't so important to this poem. It's more just, I preferred the word rebus to the word riddle. You work with what you are given, the red clay of grief, the black clay of stubbornness going on after. Clay that tastes of care or carelessness, clay that smells of the bottoms of rivers or dust. Each thought is a life you have lived or failed to live. Each word is a dish you have eaten or left on the table. There are honeys so bitter no one would willingly choose to take them. The clay takes them. Honey of weariness, honey of vanity, honey of cruelty, fear. This rebus, slip and stubbornness, bottom of river, my own consumed life. When will I learn to read it plainly, slowly, uncolored by hope or desire? Not to understand it, only to see. As water given sugar sweetens, given salt grows salty, we become our choices. Each yes, each no continues. This one a ladder, that one an anvil or cup. The ladder leans into its darkness. The anvil leans into its silence. The cup sits empty. How can I enter this question? The clay has asked. Before I wrote this next poem, I never would have imagined that I could have written on a subject like this. I just would have thought, oh, that's, somebody else can write about that. I can't imagine a poem about that. And then suddenly you find yourself doing it. This 2001 book, which is the most recent in the selected poems and predates September 2001, has more ordinary domestic life than my earlier books tended to speak more through the vehicle of the natural world, and this book actually has like regular human stuff in it. And the next book, something else again. But anyhow, so the poem is on habit and called Habit. The shoes put on each time, left first, then right. The morning potion's teaspoon of sweetness stirred always for 7 circlings, no fewer, no more, into the cracked blue cup. Touching the pocket for wallet, for keys, before closing the door. How did we come to believe these small rituals promise that we are today the selves we yesterday knew, tomorrow will be? How intimate and unthinking, the way the toothbrush is shaken dry after use, the part we wash first in the bath. Which habits we learned from others and which are ours alone, we may never know. Unbearable to acknowledge how much they are themselves, our fated life. Open the traveling suitcase. There, the beloved red sweater, bright tangle of necklace, earrings of amber, each confirming, I chose these, I. But habit is different. It chooses. And we, its good horse, opening our mouths at even the sight of the bit. Well, I'm going to skip the object poem. Sorry, it's a very lively button. I think they have the book outside if you want to open it and see how lively the button is. But moving on, this poem opens with a quote by Chekhov, a very good piece of writing advice sent in a letter to his brother who also wanted to be a writer. We've never heard of Chekhov's brother's writing, but it's still good advice. In praise of coldness. If you wish to move your reader, Chekhov wrote, you must write more coldly. Heraclitus recommended, a dry soul is best. And so at the center of many great works is found a preserving dispassion, like the vanishing point of Quattrocento perspective, or the tiny packets of desiccant enclosed in a box of new shoes or seeds. But still, the vanishing point is not the painting, the silica is not the blossoming plant. Chekhov, dying, read the timetables of trains. To what more earthly thing could he have been faithful? Scent of rocking distances, smoke of blue trees out the window, hampers of bread, pickled cabbage, boiled meat. Scent of the knowable journey. Neither a person entirely broken nor one entirely whole can speak. In sorrow, pretend to be fearless. In happiness, tremble. I'm going to read you one poem in a form I think of as wandering rhyme. It starts out rhyming regularly and becomes a bit less regular as the poem goes on. And I work occasionally in form, and so I wanted to give you one example of that. Milk. From time to time, the placid shrugs its shoulders. Earthquakes, for instance. But still the world depends on placid things' resistance. The fire requires its trees, the sea its hem of boulders, the wind without its halls would howl in silence. For everything that flares up, something lowers itself, digs in for an existence in the long haul, slows. It may well be the placid knows its worth. The cow whose calf was taken eats again. But do not guess too quickly at the meaning in the red hips' unbent squareness, the large-jawed head half buried in the grass. With each fly's weightless bite, the thick skin shivers. The placid, unlike us, lives in the moment. Something must. Like chairs or painted dressers, on an earth where loss is so all-present that we drink it without thinking, blue-white in the early morning glass. I also rarely write explicitly to current events, but the story which I read in the newspaper some years ago, this is during the Rwandan genocide, so undid me that I did find I needed to speak about it. I particularly needed to speak about it because, as you'll see at the end of the poem, the day that I read it, I had the urge to and didn't. And so my penance for that silence was to carry it a bit like the ancient mariner with his albatross and make up for my silence by telling the story again. So this is out of the newspaper. The title is Manners/Rwanda. And I have felt these recent years that, given what's going on, especially in my own country, that it's important once in a reading to acknowledge the suffering going on in this world, overtly. Manners, Rwanda. They took the woman and tied to one arm a child, to the other arm a child, to one leg a child, to the other leg a child. You also read this in the paper, and threw them all in. No marks of damage, not one on the 5 bodies, which means, of course, that they drowned, which means, of course, that she knew. The river made its way from higher ground toward lower and carried them with decorum, the way a river does. It carries what it is given. And because in the night a border was crossed, what was given then was taken out with a pole. It may have been untied before being added to the tally sheet with others and given next to the quicklime and earth, but probably not. There it will likely stay, where it was carried, the last contact with anything living, a hand's continuing rising, almost a waving, almost a plea, letting go after rolling it in. The two beats of the fall, almost gentle, a door being carefully opened, quietly closed. And though you too are sickened, as even the river is sickened, undrinkable now with the human heart, you also carry what you were given with decorum. Perhaps reminded later by something mentioned only in passing, a large family, a cat's toy of string. You stop smiling a moment soon. Across the table, someone notices but does not speak. You watch his question rise and seem to waver like a hand about to act, a hand about to change its mind, then drop politely away. So as my great hero and departed friend Chekhov would say, probably not a good poem, and still I wrote it. A cedary fragrance. Even now, decades after, I wash my face with cold water, not for discipline, nor memory, nor the icy awakening slap, but to practice choosing to make the unwanted wanted. For horses, horseflies. We know nothing of the lives of others. Under the surface, what strange desires, what rages, weaknesses, fears. Sometimes it breaks into the daily paper and we shake our heads in wonder. Who would behave in such a way, we ask. Unspoken the thought, let me not be tested. Unspoken the thought, let me not be known. Under the surface, something that whispers, anything can be done. For horses, horseflies. For humans, shame. I'm just going to read a few more, figure out which ones. This is a good antidote to that one. One of my books is full of recipes for getting through times that I think Churchill called it taking a long walk with the black dog. And it's full of various poems to answer depression and find ways to speak back to it, if not quite exit it. So this one is very specific for the moments when one finds oneself saying, there's nothing I can do, there's nothing I can do. And it was written in the remembrance of what the ecologists call the butterfly effect, where, a butterfly flaps its wings in China and there's a monsoon in Africa 9 months later. So changing everything. I was walking again in the woods. A yellow light was sifting all I saw. Willfully, with a cold heart, I took a stick, lifted it to the opposite side of the path. There, I said to myself, that's done now, brushing one hand against the other to clean them of the tiny fragments of bark. So, one more from this book, and then I think just one from the forthcoming book. So I live in a town called Mill Valley, and it was named after the mill that took all of the redwood trees off Mount Tamalpais after the 1906 earthquake and fire and shipped them over the Golden Gate to rebuild San Francisco. If you look at old pictures of Mill Valley, it was a very sunny town. And if you look at Mill Valley now, it is a very shady town because all of those trees are coming back. And as you know, redwoods are rather grand beasties. So this is one rather proximate to me. Tree. It is foolish to let a young redwood grow next to a house. Even in this one lifetime, you will have to choose. That great calm being, this clutter of soup pots and books. Already the first branch tips brush at the window. Softly, calmly, immensity taps at your life. So this next book, which contains poems that came out after the first half of 2001, is actually called After. And 2001 was just a year of an enormous number of deaths of all kinds, known to me and not known to me. The ensuing years as well. I think it might be one reaches a certain stage of life and suddenly it's coming at you from all directions. I keep a Buddhist altar in my house, and at one point there were 9 names of people I was close to listed on that altar. So the poem is the last poem in the book. It's called "It Was Like This, You Were Happy." It was like this. You were happy, then you were sad, then happy again, then not. It went on. You were innocent or you were guilty. Actions were taken or not. At times you spoke, at other times you were silent. Mostly it seems you were silent. What could you say? Now it is almost over. Like a lover, your life bends down and kisses your life. It does this not in forgiveness. Between you there is nothing to forgive, but with the simple nod of a baker at the moment he sees the bread is finished with transformation. Eating, too, is a thing now only for others. It doesn't matter what they will make of you or your days, they will be wrong. They will miss the wrong woman, miss the wrong man. All the stories they tell will be tales of their own invention. Your story was this. You were happy, then you were sad. You slept, you awakened. Sometimes you ate roasted chestnuts, sometimes persimmons. Thank you very much.